We need to talk about the elephant in the room that nobody wants to address. We need to talk about the biggest crypto exchange in the world, the massive disrespect they showed to our community, and the incredibly shocking reason why they might be about to come crawling back to us, begging for forgiveness. You remember what happened. It wasn't even that long ago. Binance, the absolute giant of the crypto industry, the company that processes more trades than almost any other platform on Earth, decided they wanted a piece of the Pi network action. But here's the thing. They didn't want to wait for the core team to finish building. They didn't want to respect the 6-year process of creating something legitimate and compliant. So what did they do? They took a shortcut that shocked everyone. They listed fake Pi. They listed IOUs, promises on paper, not the real thing. They used our name without permission. They used our logo. They let traders gamble on something that wasn't even the actual Pi network token. And it caused absolute chaos. It created massive confusion in the market. It made people outside our community think Pi was just another pump and dump scheme with no real value. The core team had to publicly step in and tell the world that this listing was completely unauthorized and not the real Pi. It was embarrassing. It was disrespectful. It was a slap in the face to every pioneer who spent years building this network the right way. For many pioneers watching this right now, that was the moment they wrote off Binance forever. They said, "We don't need them. We never needed them." They showed their true colors. They're greedy. They're the enemy of everything Pi stands for. But today, I'm here to tell you something that's going to completely change how you see this situation. The entire dynamic has flipped upside down in a way that absolutely nobody expected. And the reason why is something most people in crypto aren't paying attention to yet. While we've been patiently building our network the right way, while we've been getting our KYC systems perfect, while we've been preparing for regulatory compliance, the world around Binance has completely changed. They're facing threats to their business that they never imagined would be this serious. And suddenly, that project they disrespected, that mobile mining app they thought was just a joke, is starting to look like the only lifeline they have left in a world where regulations are tightening around their throat. We're no longer in a position where we need to beg them to list us. We're no longer hoping they'll do us some kind of favor. The situation has completely reversed. Now we're talking about them needing us to survive the next phase of crypto. And if you think a real Binance listing is impossible after what they did to us with those fake IOUs, then you haven't been paying attention to the absolutely desperate situation that CZ and his entire team are facing right now. But before I explain what's really happening behind the scenes, there's something critical you need to understand about why they betrayed us in the first place. Welcome back, pioneers. I'm Nathan, and today we need to have a very serious adult conversation about exchanges, power dynamics, and how the cables have completely turned in our favor. But to understand where we are right now, we have to go back to that painful moment of betrayal with the IOU listings and really understand what was going through their minds. Why did Binance list fake Pi? Why would the biggest exchange in the world risk their reputation by listing something that wasn't real? The answer is actually pretty simple when you think about it. Pure greed. Nothing more, nothing less. Binance looked at the Pi network and they saw 50 million people incredibly engaged with this project. They saw the massive search traffic. They saw Pi trending on social media. They saw the hype building. And most importantly, they saw an opportunity to make money immediately. They didn't care that Open Mainnet wasn't launched yet. They didn't care that real Pi tokens weren't even available to trade. They just wanted the trading fees from people gambling on the name and the hype. It was lazy, it was opportunistic, and it was deeply disrespectful to the 6 years of careful, methodical work that Dr. Nicholas and the core team put into building this properly. It showed very clearly that Binance still thought of us as just another meme coin community that they could exploit for quick cash. They saw us as users to extract money from, not as a legitimate project to respect. But here's what's interesting. Dr. Nicholas didn't panic when this happened. He didn't start begging Binance to make it official. He didn't try to cut some backdoor deal. Instead, he calmly told the entire world that the listing was completely unauthorized. He made it crystal clear that those IOUs were not real Pi. And then he did something that confused a lot of people at the time. He just went back to work. He kept building, he kept focusing on compliance and verification. And here's why that decision was absolutely brilliant. Dr. Nicholas knew something that Binance didn't know. He understood something about the future that they were completely blind to. He knew that the Wild West era of cryptocurrency, the time period where exchanges could do basically whatever they wanted without consequences, was rapidly coming to an end. He could see the regulatory storm forming on the horizon, and he knew that eventually governments were going to come down hard on the crypto industry with rules and requirements and legal frameworks. When that happened, being the biggest exchange in the world wouldn't matter at all if you weren't compliant with the new regulations. Binance made a bet on speed and hype. They chose short-term profits over long-term legitimacy. Pi Network made the opposite bet. We chose compliance and patience over quick money. We built for the regulated future, not the chaotic present. And right now, in real time, we're watching the results of those two different strategies play out in the most dramatic way possible. Binance is bleeding. They're losing ground. They're facing problems on multiple fronts. And Pi is rising. We're getting stronger. We're getting more legitimate. We're positioning ourselves perfectly for what comes next. But to really understand why Binance is suddenly desperate to get Pi back on their platform, and this time they want to do it the right way with real Pi tokens, you need to understand the massive regulatory mistake they made by underestimating just how serious European governments were about controlling crypto. And what happened next changed everything. Look at the news headlines over the last 6 to 12 months. If you've been paying attention to the crypto industry at all, you've seen the pattern. Binance is in serious trouble across the Western world. They've been hit with massive fines in the United States. They faced regulatory action in multiple countries. But the really big problem, the one that's keeping their executives up at night, is what's happening in Europe right now. Europe just passed something called MiCA, that stands for Markets in Crypto Assets Regulation. And it's not some weak suggestion. It's not some guidelines that you can maybe follow if you feel like it. It's the strictest, most comprehensive crypto law that any major economic zone has ever implemented. It's basically the European Union looking at the entire crypto industry and saying, if you want to operate here, if you want access to hundreds of millions of customers and trillions of dollars in capital, then you need to play by very strict rules. You need to know exactly who your users are. You need to stop money laundering. You need to prevent financial crimes. You need to operate with the same level of responsibility and oversight as traditional financial institutions. You need to be a legitimate, grown-up business, not some offshore gambling platform.
And here's the problem for Binance. Their entire business model was built on being able to move fast and break things. They built their empire on being the exchange that didn't ask too many questions. They grew so quickly precisely because they weren't weighed down by compliance costs and regulatory overhead. They were the Wild West option. And that worked great when governments were still figuring out what to do about crypto. But now the rules have changed, and Binance wasn't ready. They didn't prepare. They gambled that regulations would stay loose forever. They were wrong. The result? They've had to pull out of certain European countries entirely. They're losing massive amounts of market share to competitors who prepared better. They're spending incredible amounts of money trying to catch up on compliance. And they're absolutely terrified of losing access to the entire European market, which represents a huge portion of global crypto trading volume and capital. Now, let me show you the other side of this equation. While Binance was fighting desperately with regulators, while they were scrambling to avoid getting shut down, what was Pi Network doing? We were quietly passing MiCA compliance frameworks. The recent information and confirmations coming out show that Pi was specifically built from the ground up to meet these exact regulatory standards that Europe is now demanding. We have the KYC verification that they require. We have the transparency they demand. We have the security standards they expect. We are quite literally the gold standard of regulatory compliance that Europe is looking for in crypto projects. Do you see what just happened here? In the span of about 18 months, the entire market dynamic completely flipped. Binance used to look at Pi as this annoying mobile coin that wasn't serious enough for their platform. Now suddenly, they're looking at their portfolio of listed coins, and they're realizing that maybe half of them are regulatory nightmares that might get them banned in the European Union. They desperately need safe, compliant assets that they can offer to their European customers. They need coins that won't get them sued into oblivion or shut down completely. Pi Network went from being the project they disrespected and ignored to being potentially the safest bet in the entire crypto industry. We're one of the only massive, truly decentralized networks that comes pre-packaged with the kind of regulatory approval that Binance desperately needs just to stay alive and keep operating in Western markets. The tables have completely turned. But there's actually another reason, a very specific reason, why our 50 million pioneers are suddenly the most valuable commodity in the entire crypto industry to an exchange like Binance. And this one has absolutely nothing to do with regulations or compliance. This is about something even more fundamental to their business. Think about the biggest problem that crypto exchanges are facing right now. It's not just regulations, although that's obviously huge. The other massive problem is bots. Fake volume, wash trading, artificial manipulation. This is absolutely destroying trust in the crypto market. Regulators hate it because it makes the market look fraudulent. Advertisers hate it because they can't tell if they're reaching real people. Institutional investors hate it because they need legitimate price discovery. The whole system is polluted with fake activity. Binance has millions and millions of user accounts registered on their platform. But here's the uncomfortable question that regulators keep asking them. How many of those accounts are actually real, unique human beings? Nobody really knows the answer. A huge percentage of trading volume on crypto exchanges comes from bots that are specifically designed to manipulate prices, to create false liquidity, to trick real traders into making bad decisions. This is a cancer in the crypto industry, and exchanges can't solve it because they built their platforms without proper identity verification from the beginning. Now, they're stuck. They can't force everyone to verify because they'd lose too many users. But they also can't prove to regulators that their volume is real. Now look at Pi Network. What's the one thing we have that literally nobody else in the crypto world has? What did we spend 6 long, painful years building through that slow, methodical, sometimes frustrating KYC process that had people complaining the entire time? We have over 50 million proof of personhood verified human beings. Real people, real identities. Every single pioneer who completed KYC went through a legitimate verification process that confirms they are a unique individual, not a bot, not a fake account, not someone with 100 different wallets. To an exchange like Binance that's trying desperately to prove to regulators and institutional investors that they're a legitimate business serving real people, our user base isn't just valuable. It's pure gold. It's exactly what they need and don't have. When Binance eventually lists Pi, and I believe they will, it's not just about adding another trading pair to make fees on trades. It's about something much bigger. They'll be importing the cleanest, largest, most thoroughly verified user community in the entire history of cryptocurrency directly onto their platform. In one move, they immediately boost their real user numbers. They can show regulators concrete proof that they're serious about serving actual human beings, not just facilitating bot trading and manipulation. When they listed those fake Pi IOUs last time, what did they want? They wanted our hype. They wanted the excitement. They wanted the trading volume. But now,
Now they need something completely different. They need our humanity. They need our verified status to validate their own exchange as legitimate. They need our compliance to save their business. The power dynamic has completely shifted that it's almost hard to believe. 6 months ago, or maybe a year ago, pioneers were hoping and begging for a Binance listing, thinking it would validate us. Today, the reality is that Binance needs our compliant, verified user base to potentially save their European operations from regulatory shutdown. We don't need them anymore. They need us. But even if all of this is true, even if they do list us, even if it's real Pi this time and not fake IOUs, there's still one massive question that critics always throw at me. And it's the question that determines whether you understand what's really about to happen or whether you're going to make a terrible mistake. The question is this: Nathan, how does putting Pi on the world's biggest crypto exchange actually lead to that massive GCV price target of $314,159 that the community believes in? Wouldn't everyone just dump their Pi the second it lists and crash the price to nothing? This is where you really need to understand how global liquidity works and what happens psychologically when a major asset gets listed on a major exchange. Because the skeptics have this completely backwards. The people who say that a Binance listing means everyone panic sells and the price crashes to zero, they're thinking way too small. They're thinking like short-term flippers who just want to make a quick profit. They're thinking like gamblers, not like people who understand how real financial markets actually work at scale. Here's what a Binance listing actually does that no amount of peer-to-peer trading, no matter how much of it happens, can ever accomplish. It opens the floodgates to global institutional capital, real money, big money, the kind of money that moves markets and creates legitimate, sustained price discovery. Right now, today, if there's a hedge fund in London, or a family office in Dubai, or a venture capital firm in Singapore that looks at Pi Network and thinks, this is interesting, this could be valuable, we want to invest $10 million into this project, they can't do it. There's literally no mechanism for them to acquire that amount of Pi safely, legally, and in a way that their compliance departments would approve. The infrastructure doesn't exist.
A Binance listing creates that infrastructure overnight. It puts Pi on the biggest stage in global finance. It creates a legitimate, regulated pathway for serious money to enter the Pi ecosystem. It validates Pi as a top-tier global digital asset that institutional investors can actually hold without their lawyers panicking. Now, take that reality and combine it with the scarcity factors that we already know are coming. Mining is ending. The free accumulation phase, where you could get Pi just by pressing a button on your phone every day, that's coming to a close. According to the core team's own statements, roughly 80% of pioneers have locked up their Pi for extended time periods, anywhere from several months to several years. That means the actual circulating supply that will be available to trade on day one of a major exchange listing is going to be absolutely tiny compared to the total supply that exists. So let's think through what this means practically. You have the world's biggest crypto exchange suddenly opening the doors and giving access to trillions of dollars worth of global capital. Hedge funds, family offices, venture capital, retail traders from 150 countries, all of them can suddenly buy Pi with the click of a button. All of that demand, all of that buying pressure, all of that capital is chasing what? It's chasing a very, very small amount of Pi that's actually available for sale because most pioneers locked theirs up and aren't selling. What happens when absolutely massive demand meets extremely limited supply on a global public stage where the whole world is watching? The price doesn't go down. That's not how markets work. The price explodes upward. It has to. It's simple supply and demand. A Binance listing isn't the end goal of this entire project. The listing is actually just a tool. It's the mechanism that gives Pi access to the kind of global liquidity and capital flows that are needed to sustain a genuinely high price over time. Without that access to real institutional money, no asset can maintain significant value long term.
But here's where it gets really interesting from a psychological standpoint. If the pioneer community holds the line, if we refuse to sell cheap, if we understand the value of what we're holding and we don't panic at the first sign of volatility, then all of that buy pressure from the rest of the world, from people who are just discovering Pi for the first time and want to get in, that pressure has nowhere to go except up. It forces the price higher and higher toward the GCV that the community has been supporting. The listing isn't something to fear. The listing is the moment when the world finally finds out what Pi is really worth, when actual money is on the line and real price discovery happens. But understanding this creates what might be the final and most dangerous trap of this entire 6-year journey. Pioneers, we need to be absolutely clear-eyed and honest about what's really about to happen when and if Binance lists Pi for real. We need to talk about incentives and motivations, because if you don't understand what Binance actually wants, you could make a mistake that you'll regret for the rest of your life. Binance is a business. They're an exchange. And exchanges have a very specific business model. They make their money when you trade. They profit when you buy and sell. They earn fees based on volume and activity. The more you panic, the more you trade, the more money they make. That's just how the business works. There's nothing evil about it, it's just reality. If Binance lists Pi, and I genuinely believe they will at some point, you need to understand that they're not doing it because they love our community. They're not doing it to help pioneers succeed. They're not doing it because they believe in Dr. Nicholas's vision of financial inclusion. They're doing it because they want to make money from trading fees on our volume. And more importantly, they want to acquire our Pi as cheaply as possible before the rest of the world figures out what it's worth. Think about it from their perspective. They know what we're holding. They've done the research. They understand that Pi is scarce. They know it's regulatory compliant in a way that most crypto projects aren't. They know we have a verified user base that's incredibly valuable. They're not stupid. They see the same potential value that we see. So what's the best strategy for them? Get it listed. Create some volatility. Let people panic sell. Accumulate as much as possible at low prices before mainstream adoption really kicks in and the price goes vertical. That's the smart play from their perspective. And this brings me to what would be the ultimate tragedy of this entire 6-year journey. Pioneers, we need to be absolutely clear-eyed and honest about what's really about to happen when and if Binance lists Pi for real. We need to talk about incentives and motivations, because if you don't understand what Binance actually wants, you could make a mistake that you'll regret for the rest of your life. Binance is a business. They're an exchange. And exchanges have a very specific business model. They make their money when you trade. They profit when you buy and sell. They earn fees based on volume and activity. The more you panic, the more you trade, the more money they make. That's just how the business works. There's nothing evil about it, it's just reality. If Binance lists Pi, and I genuinely believe they will at some point, you need to understand that they're not doing it because they love our community. They're not doing it to help pioneers succeed. They're not doing it because they believe in Dr. Nicholas's vision of financial inclusion. They're doing it because they want to make money from trading fees on our volume. And more importantly, they want to acquire our Pi as cheaply as possible before the rest of the world figures out what it's worth. Think about it from their perspective. They know what we're holding. They've done the research. They understand that Pi is scarce. They know it's regulatory compliant in a way that most crypto projects aren't. They know we have a verified user base that's incredibly valuable. They're not stupid. They see the same potential value that we see. So what's the best strategy for them? Get it listed. Create some volatility. Let people panic sell. Accumulate as much as possible at low prices before mainstream adoption really kicks in and the price goes vertical. That's the smart play from their perspective. And this brings me to what would be the ultimate tragedy of this entire 6-year journey. Imagine holding Pi for 6 years. Imagine dealing with the ridicule from people who called it a scam. Imagine wading through the IOU listings and the disrespect from Binance. Imagine staying patient while the core team built everything the right way. And then imagine that on the very first day that Pi lists on Binance, you see the price hit $10 or maybe even $50, and you think, wow, I'm rich. I need to sell everything right now before it crashes. That would be the worst possible decision you could make. You would be handing over your Pi at bargain prices to institutions and exchanges who understand that what you're holding is worth exponentially more. You'd be selling the future of global financial infrastructure for pocket change. You're not holding a lottery ticket that you cash in at the first opportunity. You're not holding some speculative meme coin that pumps and dumps. You're holding a piece of the future payment rails that will power international commerce. You're holding compliance and verification and legitimacy in a digital form. You're holding exactly what the regulated future of finance requires. Binance might want Pi back on their exchange now, but you need to understand why. They want it so they can control it. They want it so they can profit from it. They want to accumulate it cheap before you realize what it's really worth. But here's the beautiful part of where we are right now. The tables have completely turned. We have all the leverage now. The regulators are actually on our side because we built compliantly. The technology is proven and works. The user base is verified and legitimate. We did everything right while they cut corners. Do not hand the victory over to the exchanges that disrespected us when we needed them the most. Do not give them your Pi cheap after you held through everything else. You held through the doubt when everyone said it would never work. You held through the silence when there was no news for months. Now hold for the ultimate vindication that's coming very soon. But there's one more piece to this puzzle that we need to discuss before we finish, because understanding the timeline and the sequence of events that's about to unfold is absolutely critical for maintaining your conviction when doubt creeps in or when prices don't move as fast as you hoped in the early days. Let's talk about what actually happens step by step when a major exchange like Binance lists a new asset, especially one as unique as Pi. Because if you don't understand the process, you might misinterpret what you're seeing and make emotional decisions. First, there's going to be announcement speculation. Before any official listing happens, rumors start circulating. People claim they have inside information. Social media starts buzzing. This creates anticipation and excitement, but it also creates opportunities for manipulation. Some people will try to profit off the rumors before anything real happens. Then comes the official announcement. When Binance actually confirms they're listing Pi, you'll see an immediate reaction. Some pioneers will celebrate, some will panic. The price might jump in peer-to-peer markets before the listing even goes live. This is normal market behavior based on changing expectations.
Next is the listing day itself. This is where things get really interesting and where most people make their biggest mistakes. On day one, you're going to see extreme volatility. The price might spike up dramatically as FOMO kicks in and everyone rushes to buy. Then it might crash down as some pioneers who waited 6 years decide to take profits immediately. Then it might spike again as buyers see the dip as an opportunity. This chaos is completely normal and expected. What matters isn't what happens on day one. What matters is what happens over the following weeks and months as real price discovery occurs, as institutional money starts flowing in, as the market figures out what the actual supply and demand dynamics look like. History shows us this pattern over and over. When a legitimate project with real technology and real adoption gets listed on a major exchange, there's initial volatility and chaos. But if the fundamentals are strong, if the supply is limited, if there's genuine institutional interest, the price eventually stabilizes at a level that reflects true value. And that level is usually much higher than what short-term traders were willing to pay in the first few days. This is why understanding the difference between price and value is so critical right now. Price is what the market says something costs at any given moment. It fluctuates based on emotion, on fear, on FOMO, on short-term thinking. Value is what something is actually worth based on its utility, its scarcity, its technological capability, its position in the market. Price and value don't always match, especially in the short term, but over time, price tends to move toward value. Pi's value is determined by the fact that we're a verified, compliant, global payment network with tens of millions of real users. That value doesn't change just because the price bounces around on day one of a Binance listing. If you understand the value, you can hold through the price volatility without panicking. And there's one final thing you need to understand about how exchanges like Binance operate that will help you make sense of everything you're about to see. Exchanges benefit from uncertainty and volatility. They make more money when people are confused and trading emotionally. They make less money when people are calm and holding long term.
So don't be surprised if you start seeing fear, uncertainty, and doubt being spread around the time of any major listing. Don't be shocked if there are sudden negative news articles or scary headlines or coordinated campaigns to make you doubt your decision to hold. This is part of the game. It's how markets work. The smart money accumulates from the scared money. That's how wealth transfers happen. Your job, as a pioneer who understands what you're holding, is not to be the scared money. Your job is to recognize manipulation when you see it. Your job is to hold through the noise and the volatility and the attempts to shake you out of your position. Because on the other side of that volatility, after the dust settles, after the weak hands have sold, that's when the real price discovery happens. That's when Pi shows its true value. Let me be very clear about something. I'm not telling you to never sell. I'm not saying you should hold forever, no matter what happens. What I'm saying is that you should have a plan. You should understand what you're holding and why it's valuable. You should make decisions based on fundamentals and long-term thinking, not based on fear or short-term price movements or what some random person on social media tells you to do. If you held through 6 years of building, if you completed your KYC when people said it was a waste of time, if you locked your Pi when you could have kept it liquid, then you obviously believe in this project. Don't throw away that conviction the moment things get volatile or scary. Trust the process that got you this far. The reality is that Binance needs us more than we need them now. The regulatory environment has shifted in our favor. The compliance standards that we built for are now mandatory. The verified user base that we created is now the most valuable asset in crypto. We won the long game by being patient and doing things right. Whether Binance lists us next month or next year or 2 years from now, it doesn't change the fundamental value of what we built. It just changes when the rest of the world gets easy access to participate. And when that access opens up, when the floodgates finally open and global capital can flow freely into Pi, that's when holding through all the doubt and criticism and waiting finally pays off. So here's what you need to do right now. Make sure your Pi is secure. Double check that your passphrase is safely stored offline where nobody can access it. Confirm that your KYC is completely finished and verified. Understand how to use your wallet properly. Get educated on how exchanges work and how to avoid common mistakes that new traders make. Most importantly, decide right now what your personal strategy is. At what price would you consider selling some Pi? What percentage of your holdings will you keep long-term no matter what? What would change your mind about the project's value? Having these answers before the emotions of a listing day hit you is the only way to avoid making decisions you'll regret. The next 6 to 12 months are going to be absolutely historic for Pi Network. The exchange listings are coming, the partnerships are forming, the real-world adoption is accelerating, the regulatory clarity is being established. Everything we worked for is coming together at once. The pioneers who stay consistent, who keep their Pi secure, who complete all their verification steps, who understand what they're holding and why it's valuable, you're going to be positioned perfectly when the floodgates finally open and global capital can flow freely into Pi. The accumulation phase is almost over. The utilization phase is beginning. The recognition phase is approaching. And the pioneers who recognize this transition and hold strong through it are going to benefit in ways that seem impossible today, but will seem obvious in hindsight. If you understand why Binance went from disrespecting us to desperately needing us now, smash that like button right now. If you want to stay updated on every development as we move toward major exchange listings and mainstream adoption, make sure you subscribe because the biggest announcements are still ahead of us. The critics said we'd never be taken seriously. They said exchanges would never list us properly. They said no legitimate institution would ever want anything to do with mobile-mined cryptocurrency. They were wrong about everything. We built it right, we did it the hard way, we stayed patient when everyone told us to hurry up. And now the entire industry is coming to us because we have what they desperately need. The power has shifted. We won. Don't forget that when the volatility comes. I'll see you in the next video.